spin that wheel and pick a pop check, Mr. Finn.
Yeah, let's see who comes up today. Give it a spin. And
it's Rachel.
I like it.
It's Rachel
It came
Popcak.
up.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping for because we have the questions for Rachel.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good that it ended up that way. Good morning, Rachel.
Rachel Popcak-Issac, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. How about you guys?
Doing
Not bad,
fabulous.
Not bad. I'm just trying to balance pressure of high performance with the importance of true self-care. Not an easy
Well, you
task.
came to the right place.
That's right. Ron has to ask himself that every morning when he gets up. How do I do this?
My first question,
How do
yeah.
I do this? Yeah.
Now, you work with athletes, you work with executives, people that are really in high-pressure environments. And, these people are highly esteemed because they're very disciplined, they've got drive. So how do you teach your clients to balance the pressure?
Yeah, it's often a challenge, right? Because high performers often really believe that rest is kind of the opposite of productivity, but in reality, rest is what makes sustainable performance possible. So, when I work with clients, I help them really reframe self-care as a performance strategy, not a luxury. We talk about the physiology of performance. So when you're always in that kind of push harder mode, your nervous system is actually living in stress response, which is kind of eventually just depletes our focus, our confidence, our resilience. So rest and recovery aren't just about relaxation. It actually allows our brain to consolidate learning, to regulate emotions, and rebuild the energy that we need to kind of meet our next challenge. And I also encourage them to kind of adopt rhythms of performance rather than just kind of a constant grind. So, that means practicing intentional pauses, setting boundaries that protect rest or your own needs. And just even building recovery into their routines with the same kind of seriousness that they give to training or to work. In many ways, self-care becomes kind of an act of discipline itself, that discipline to stop, to recharge, invest in our long-term excellence rather than kind of just that short-term output. And I also kind of lastly tie that into purpose, right? So when we align rest with our values and our goals, it really becomes a lot clearer that taking care of ourselves, being attentive to our own needs, it's not stepping back from success. It's actually kind of stepping into it with that strength and clarity and that real sustainability.
Well, let's talk about the highest achiever of all, God. and he took a rest. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
He built it in,
Yes.
not only for himself, but he was saying to us, you absolutely have to do this. And with high achievers, Rachel, obviously everybody's thinking about productivity as the ultimate outcome. How in the world do you talk them into this idea that they need to recharge through this rest and begin to think differently and measure success differently?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I think one of the biggest challenges that, a lot of us, but especially my high achieving clients kind of face is sort of that belief that their worth is measured only by what they do,
Right.
Their results, their productivity, their wins. And because of that, I think self-care often feels like lost time or even guilt-inducing, as if they're kind of slowing down, or failing or even maybe being selfish. But another challenge is that, kind of that fear of like losing their edge and that momentum. So a lot of people worry that if they rest, they'll lose that momentum or kind of even be seen as less committed. So that mindset makes it really hard to see recovery as part of training rather than kind of a break from it. So what I work with clients on is really reframing self-care kind of as a performance multiplier, right? So I'll kind of even show them the science of how sleep and nutrition and movement and mental rest directly impact our focus and our emotional regulation and even our decision making. And we also connect that to their higher and larger purpose because ultimately, sustained success comes from being able to show up consistently as their best self, as who God created them to be. And when clients really make that shift, they can begin to see self-care not as a distraction from achievement, but as kind of that very thing that actually allows them to keep excelling without burning out or even losing joy along the way.
So, Rachel, you talk about the idea, you said, that they're that they're worried, that they'll lose their edge. So obviously that's kind of a barrier for them as far as, prioritizing self-care. Are there other barriers that you see?
There are a lot, honestly. I think, there's internal boundaries. So kind of usually those internal boundaries center on mindset. So a lot of clients wrestle with guilt, feeling like rest equals laziness, or, with fear, kind of believing that, like we said, right, slowing down is going to kind of cost them that momentum or some sort of failure. And some tie their self-worth, so tightly to output that, any time spent not producing just kind of feels wasted. The other thing is external boundaries. So a lot of them come from, culture or environment, kind of workplaces that, glorify hustle, right? Packed schedules, that 24/7 availability, that just makes it hard for us to set boundaries. And even kind of family or peer expectations, sometimes just reinforces that idea that, busyness equals value. So I really work with clients on a lot of strategies that help them kind of overcome those barriers and help them feel more comfortable with that idea of self-care and rest.
Are you seeing a shift? Obviously, you're seeing a shift in your own clients that you're spending time with, taking them through these exercises. What about the culture at large? Are you seeing a shift for the average person on the street?
Yeah, I think it's something that's becoming certainly more talked about. I mean, we're seeing sort of that movement of mental health being or working to become, less stigmatized, right? But I think, it's definitely still a challenge for all of us. And so, I really try to work with clients on, reframing self-care as a performance strategy. I also kind of encourage them to start with just small steps, because this is hard for everybody. So even, 2 minutes of breathing between meetings or kind of a short walk can really shift our nervous system and help us make those small, repeatable habits that help us to start to build trust in that process, because this is a challenge, culturally and also individually.
How do people get a hold of you there, Rachel?
You can find out more about my work and all of our work at CatholicCounselors.com. And then you can specifically find out more about what I do at CatholicCounselors.com. You check out our faith-based success and performance coaching.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rachel Isaac.